They say family never turns their back on you, but mine did, with a smile. It happened on a quiet Sunday evening in Denver. I remember the clinking of glasses, the smell of roasted chicken, and my father's calm voice cutting through the noise. Emily, we've decided to transfer the house to Madison. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The house, the one I'd rebuilt from cracked walls and leaking pipes, the one I poured every paycheck into for 5 years, was no longer mine. My younger sister, Madison, smiled like she'd just won a prize she never earned. My mother looked away. I didn't know it then, but that dinner would be the start of the cruelest betrayal of my life and the beginning of my revenge. After that dinner, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the chipped paint I'd sanded down by hand, the kitchen tiles I'd laid one by one, the porch lights I'd installed myself. Every nail, every brushstroke, they weren't just repairs. They were pieces of my life, carved into that house brick by brick. I bought my first hammer at 24. While my friends were traveling or planning weddings, I was saving every dollar from my engineering job to fix the roof that had been leaking for years. The house was collapsing. My parents said, but they couldn't afford the repairs. So I stepped in, naive and eager, believing that love was measured by what you gave up for family. I remember the first winter after the repairs. Snow fell softly on the new roof. No more water seeping into the attic. My dad had smiled, proud, saying, "You've done something amazing, Em. This house feels alive again." I believed him. For 5 years, I lived like that, working 10-hour shifts at a construction firm by day and spending nights repainting walls, rewiring sockets, and budgeting materials. The house became my escape, my pride, my legacy. I never saw it as just wood and bricks. It was proof that I could build something lasting. But the truth? I was building something for them, not for me. My sister Madison rarely visited back then. She was the golden child, the dreamer who just needed time to find herself. My parents adored her charm, her confidence, her ability to make every room light up. When she failed her 3rd year in college, they sent her to Los Angeles to chase her passion. I was the opposite: quiet, grounded, dependable, the kind of daughter who paid bills on time and fixed leaking pipes at midnight, the kind who never asked for help. And maybe that's why they thought I didn't need anything in return. Sometimes I'd find old photos while cleaning me at 12, sitting on that same porch, holding a broken railing. My dad had promised then, "One day this house will be yours." I carried that promise through every scraped knuckle and sleepless night. But as years passed, I noticed the shift. My parents stopped saying "your house" and went back to "our house." When Madison called, my mom would gush about her exciting projects while ignoring the fact that I'd just finished rebuilding the basement. At family gatherings, I became invisible, the reliable background character who kept things together. I didn't complain. Love, I thought, was about patience, about giving without expecting. Until that dinner, after my father's announcement, the air around me cracked open. My mother tried to soften it with a nervous smile, saying, "You'll understand, Emily. Madison's going through a lot. She needs the stability." Stability. That word stung. For 5 years, I was stability. The roof didn't collapse because of me. The electricity worked because of me. They still had a home because I'd refused to let it rot. That night, I went down to the basement, the one I'd turned from a moldy, dark space into a cozy reading room. I sat on the floor, staring at the exposed beams I'd installed, the bookshelves I'd built, and I whispered, "This was supposed to be mine." The silence answered me. I thought about all the times my father called Madison the future of the family, and how he'd call me the strong one, the one who didn't break, didn't complain, didn't need comfort. I used to think that was a compliment. Now I see it was a warning. Strong people are easy to use. They're the ones who hold the weight so others don't have to. When I left the basement, I noticed the new car in the driveway, Madison's. She hadn't driven one of her own in years. Later, I'd learned that my father had used money from a home equity line, the one tied to the house I'd helped save, to buy it for her. That was the night something in me hardened. I stopped thinking of myself as the daughter trying to belong. I started thinking like an engineer again. Problem, structure, consequence. My family had built a foundation on my effort, my money, and my trust. If they could use me to build it, then I could learn to take it apart. But before I tore anything down, I needed proof. The next morning, while my parents were at the market, I walked into my father's study. I hadn't been in there for years. The air smelled like old coffee and paperwork. On his desk was a stack of documents, neatly bound loan statements, tax forms, property records. That was when I saw it for the first time. A line with my name printed neatly beside a signature that wasn't mine. Emily Carter. But the C curved wrong. The T was crossed too high. I stared at it for a long time, my pulse hammering in my ears. It felt like looking at a photograph of myself that wasn't really me familiar, but twisted. That single page changed everything. I kept staring at that page until the lines blurred. My own name looked like a stranger's familiar, but wrong in every possible way. I had signed thousands of documents before. As an engineer, precision was my language. But this was a clumsy imitation, the kind of fake someone makes when they think you'll never look close enough. The document was dated 18 months ago. It listed a loan of $85,000, supposedly co-signed by me and my father. The reason for the loan: home renovation and family investment. Family investment. That phrase made me laugh, the kind of laugh that sounds too much like crying. I took out my phone, snapped pictures of every page, and left the study before my hands started shaking too badly to hold the camera. My parents came home minutes later. I remember my mother calling out, "Em, we brought your favorite pie." I pretended not to hear. That night, I barely slept. My brain wouldn't stop spinning. $85,000. My name. My signature. By sunrise, I was done wondering. I wanted answers. I called Jordan, an old friend from college who worked at a local bank. We hadn't spoken in years, but the moment I said, "It's about a loan in my name," he got quiet. "Send me the details," he said. "I'll check the system. But Emily, if this is what I think it is, you'll need proof. Official proof." An hour later, my phone buzzed with an encrypted message. A photo of the loan record, my full legal name, my social security number, my birth date, all of it correct. Except one thing. The digital signature was filed from my father's email address. My stomach dropped. The document trail showed that the loan was processed through a small local credit union. The funds had been withdrawn in cash and transferred directly into my father's company account, the same company that had been struggling for years. That's when it hit me. Every time my dad said, "We're just trying to get back on our feet," he was standing on my shoulders. I drove to the office that morning in silence. Every billboard, every stoplight, blurred past like static. When I parked, I didn't go inside. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel, trying not to scream. I'd always seen betrayal as something sudden, a single knife twist, clean and cruel. But this wasn't sudden. It was slow, careful, and methodical. It had my father's handwriting, my mother's silence, my sister's smile. By lunchtime, I made up my mind. I needed more than photos. I needed evidence that would stand in court. That evening, I went back to the house. My parents were out again, my father at some networking dinner, my mother visiting a friend. The house was quiet, too quiet. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock I'd fixed years ago. I went straight to the attic. It smelled like dust and insulation. Boxes were stacked high, Christmas decorations, old receipts, photo albums. I dug through everything, hands blackened with dust, until I found a folder labeled Property Taxes 2023. Inside were copies of mortgage payments, receipts for home improvements, and a thick envelope marked financial documents. My heartbeat doubled. Inside were printouts of several checks, loan applications, and bank transfers, all signed by me. Quote, "The handwriting was wrong on every single one. Too wide, too round. Someone had tried too hard." And then I found something else. A letter from the credit union, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Carter, confirming the successful processing of the joint loan with your daughter, Emily Carter. The date matched the one on the fake signature. I sat there, surrounded by boxes and papers that smelled like betrayal. I wanted to cry, but anger was stronger. When I finally climbed down, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway froze me. It was Madison. I ducked behind the curtain as she got out, phone in hand, laughing about something. She didn't even glance at the house, just strutted inside, perfume first, voice echoing through the hall. I could hear her talking to Mom on speakerphone. "Yeah, the money came through fine," she said. "Dad said it's covered. Emily doesn't need to know." My blood went cold. It wasn't just my father. It was all of them. I left that night without saying a word. I drove to a small 24-hour diner near my apartment, ordered black coffee, and spread all the photos and documents across the table. The waitress gave me a worried look but didn't ask. The numbers told the story better than I could. The loan, the fake signature, the account transfers all perfectly timed. They hadn't just stolen money. They'd stolen my name. For years, I thought my family didn't see me. Now I realize they saw me too clearly as the responsible one, the safe bet, the name they could use, because no one would ever suspect me of being the victim. That night, I stopped being their daughter. I became something else, a problem they didn't know they'd created. I sent all the files to Lindsay, my old roommate from grad school, now a lawyer. She called back within minutes. "Emily," she said, voice low but steady, "this isn't just fraud. This is identity theft. You can take them down for this." For the first time in days, I felt something other than rage. I felt clarity. "They took my name," I whispered, "so I'll take back everything they built with it." And as the dawn crept over Denver, lighting up the horizon like fire, I knew one thing for sure: my revenge had already begun. When you grow up in a family like mine, you learn early that silence is safer than truth. For years, I kept my mouth shut and let them walk over me. But not this time. Not after they forged my name. The next morning, I called Lindsay again. She met me at a small law office downtown, nothing fancy. Just a single hallway with old coffee stains on the carpet and the faint hum of a broken air conditioner. She was already waiting with a stack of folders. "Emily," she said, pushing her glasses up, "I looked over the documents you sent. You've got enough here to start something real. But we'll need more signed copies, email trails, witness accounts. Anything that ties your parents and sister directly to that loan." I nodded, already ahead of her. "Then I'll find it. Every scrap of it." She gave me a small smile. "Good. Because once we file, there's no going back." I didn't even hesitate. I don't want to go back. That week became a blur of quiet fury. During the day, I kept working at the engineering firm, pretending everything was normal. At night, I became someone else, the investigator of my own life. I started with the email accounts. My father had always used the same password pattern, the name of his dog, in a year. I tried Bailey 2018. Then, Bailey 2020. On the third attempt, I got in. The inbox was chaos, hundreds of business messages, bills, and family photos. But when I typed loan in the search bar, a dozen threads appeared. My pulse spiked. There it was, an email from the credit union, confirming successful approval of the co-signed loan with Emily Carter. Another from Madison's account. "Dad, I printed the forms. I think I matched her signature pretty well this time." I froze. That one line said everything. I forwarded every email to myself, saving backups on an encrypted drive Lindsay had set up for me. Then I dug deeper into bank statements, property documents, even the renovation invoices I'd paid for. Each piece painted the same picture. I built the foundation, and they used my name to cash it in. On Friday, I took a personal day off work. My parents thought I was out of town on a site inspection, so I drove straight to their house. Every room felt smaller now. The kitchen, once warm and filled with laughter, smelled like betrayal. My father's mug still sat on the counter. "World's best dad" in bold letters. I almost laughed at the irony. I went to the attic again, careful this time. No rushing, no emotion. I was collecting evidence, not memories. Inside one of my mother's sewing boxes, hidden beneath old fabric scraps, I found a small flash drive labeled Madison House Project. My heart pounded as I plugged it into my laptop later that night. Photos, scans, digital forms, copies of the fake loan contract, including one with a highlighted note that said, "Emily's signature reference, from college documents." They'd actually practiced it. Over and over. I stared at the screen, my chest tight with a mixture of disbelief and rage. The betrayal wasn't impulsive, it was planned. Calculated, executed with precision. The next day, Lindsay introduced me to a forensic handwriting analyst, a quiet, sharp-eyed man named Dr. Monroe. He looked at the documents, adjusted his glasses, and said, "This isn't even subtle. Whoever did this copied from a static image. The pressure pattern doesn't match your natural handwriting. This would hold up in court." "Good," I said, my voice steady, "because I'm done protecting them." "Doctor," Monroe tilted his head. "Family?" I nodded. He sighed softly. "Then you'll need to be stronger than them. Betrayal inside bloodlines, that's the hardest kind to win against, but it's also the most powerful when you do." Over the next 2 weeks, Lindsay and I built our case like architects of justice. She handled the legal paperwork. I provided the blueprints, the evidence that connected every lie. Each night, I printed documents, highlighted transactions, and cataloged every email. I began keeping a timeline, the dates of the forged signatures, the withdrawals, the messages. It was all there, a pattern of deceit hidden beneath years of family dinners and fake smiles. And with every discovery, my anger turned colder, sharper, more precise. I wasn't doing this out of spite anymore. I was doing it to reclaim what was mine, my name, my effort, my worth. One evening, I stood in the empty living room of my apartment, surrounded by stacks of evidence. The light from the city filtered through the blinds, slicing the room into stripes of gold and shadow. For the first time, I felt free, because now I wasn't the quiet daughter fixing other people's messes. I was the storm coming for them. Still, part of me grieved not for the money, but for the illusion I'd lost. The illusion that family meant safety. Lindsay called later that night. "We're almost ready to file," she said. "But Emily, once this starts, your relationship with them will be over. Completely." I looked at the papers spread before me, each one proof of their lies. "It already is," I said. "I just need the law to make it official." Before going to bed, I opened my journal and wrote one line. "They used my name to build their lies. I'll use their lies to rebuild my life." And as I closed it, I knew the next phase wasn't about collecting anymore. It was about confronting face to face. No hiding, no mercy. Because when you spend your whole life fixing what's broken, there comes a day when you finally decide. It's time to tear it down. When the day finally came, the air felt heavier, like the sky itself was waiting for something to break. I drove back to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon, the same kind of day when everything had started. The same neat lawn, the same creaking porch, the same smell of my mother's pot roast drifting through the window. It should have felt like home. It didn't. I parked the car, sat there for a minute, and whispered to myself, "No turning back." Then I walked up the steps and rang the doorbell. My father opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. "Emily, you didn't say you were coming." "I wanted it to be a surprise," I said, smiling just enough to keep him comfortable. He stepped aside, and I walked in. Madison was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, nails painted an expensive shade of gold. My mother looked up from the kitchen, smiling nervously. "Oh, honey, we were just talking about you." "Perfect," I said. "Then I won't need to start from the beginning." We gathered around the dining table, the same place where they'd taken everything from me weeks ago. I laid my bag on the table, unzipped it slowly, and pulled out a thick folder. "What's all this?" my father asked. "Receipts," I said. "Memories and lies." My mother frowned. "Emily, what are you talking about?" I slid the first page across the table, a printed email from the credit union. "This," I said, tapping the paper, "is a record of the $85,000 loan you opened under my name." My father stiffened. Madison's smile faltered. "I don't know what," he started, but I cut him off. "Save it. I've seen the signature. I've seen the approval email sent from your account. And the money? Transferred directly into your company's bank. Not a cent went to renovations. Not one." The silence that followed was heavy. Then Madison laughed, soft, fake, desperate. "You're being dramatic, Em. Dad handled the paperwork. Maybe it was just a mix-up." I pulled out another sheet and slid it toward her. "Then explain this," I said. "Your email dated April 3rd. Dad, I think I matched her signature pretty well this time." The color drained from her face. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. "Madison, Mom, But my father's voice cut through the air like a knife. That's enough. He looked at me, eyes cold. You don't understand how hard things have been. The company was falling apart. I did what I had to do to protect this family. You mean yourself, I said quietly. You didn't protect anyone. You stole my name, my credit, my trust, and you used it to dig a deeper hole. His jaw tightened. Watch your tone, young lady. You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for this family. That word again. Family. It used to mean safety. Now it just sounded like a weapon. I leaned forward, my voice steady. You're right. I wouldn't have anything if I'd stayed silent like you expected me to. But I did my homework. I have every document, every email, every forged signature. And starting tomorrow, so will my lawyer. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Emily, please, don't do this. We can fix it quietly. We're still your parents. I looked at her for a long moment. You stopped being my parents the day you used my name to save yourselves. Madison stood up suddenly, her chair scraping the floor. You're really going to ruin all of us over some stupid loan? I turned to her, calm as ice. You forged my signature, Madison. That's a felony, not a mistake. You could go to prison. Her bravado cracked. Dad, say something. But my father didn't move. He was staring down at the papers like they were written in a language he couldn't read. You think this will make you happy? He muttered finally. Dragging your family through court? I said, gathering my papers back into the folder. It'll make things fair. Then I reached into the bag one last time and pulled out an envelope. I tossed it onto the table. This is a notice from my lawyer. You'll be served officially tomorrow. I just wanted to give you the courtesy of hearing it from me first. My mother began to cry softly. Madison muttered something under her breath and stormed out. My father just sat there, silent, the weight of everything sinking in. For a long moment, I stood there, looking at the three people who had once been my world. And I realized something strange. I didn't hate them. I didn't even pity them. I just didn't feel anything anymore. As I turned to leave, my father spoke quietly. You're no daughter of mine. I paused in the doorway. Then it's a good thing I stopped being one the moment you forged my name. The sunlight outside was blinding when I stepped out, but it felt different, like the air itself had let me breathe again. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking away from something broken. I was walking towards something true. And deep down, beneath the exhaustion and the ache, one thought pulsed, steady and clear. They thought they could erase me, but I had just made sure the world would remember exactly who I was. When the lawsuit officially began, I thought I'd feel powerful. Instead, I felt numb. The first time I saw my father and sister sitting across from me in the courtroom, I almost didn't recognize them. My father looked smaller somehow, shoulders slumped, eyes dull. Madison, once so polished, so perfectly composed, couldn't stop tapping her fingers against the table. The rhythm was frantic, desperate. My lawyer, Daniel Reyes, whispered beside me, "Stay calm. They'll crumble under their own lies." He was right. The first hearing focused on the forged loan documents. The prosecution presented the emails, the digital signatures, the timestamps. Every piece matched exactly what I had found. When Madison was called to the stand, she tried to hold her chin high. But the moment the prosecutor displayed her email, I think I matched her signature pretty well this time. Her confidence shattered. Her voice trembled. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Dad said it was the only way. I thought we'd pay it back before she noticed. The judge's eyes narrowed. You admit you forged your sister's signature? Madison hesitated 1 second too long. Yes. That single word echoed across the courtroom. My stomach twisted, but not from anger anymore, from sadness. Because even after everything she'd done, she looked like the scared little girl who used to follow me around the backyard with scraped knees and sunburned cheeks. But the truth had a price, and we were all about to pay it. The next few weeks were brutal. Reporters started showing up at the courthouse. Words like fraud, forgery, and embezzlement appeared in local headlines. My father's company lost 3 major clients in 1 week. Investors pulled out. His reputation, once pristine in Denver's business circles, collapsed overnight. Mum called me Unse, sobbing. Emily, please, can't we make this go away? Your father's not eating. Madison's been fired. Everyone's talking about us. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I gave you the chance to fix it quietly, I said softly. You chose to bury me instead. She didn't reply. I heard her crying quietly before she hung up. A month later, the case reached its final hearing. The courtroom felt colder that day. The judge's voice was firm, steady. After reviewing the evidence, this court finds that the defendants, Mr. Thomas Carter and Miss Madison Carter, are guilty of identity fraud and forgery, resulting in financial damages and reputational harm to Miss Emily Carter. My father's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Madison broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. The judge continued, the defendants are ordered to repay the full amount of the fraudulent loan, as well as compensation for damages totaling $120,000. Additionally, a restraining order will be placed, preventing any further contact with the plaintiff. I didn't move, didn't smile, didn't cry. I just sat there as the words washed over me, a strange mix of relief and emptiness. When the gavel struck, the sound was sharp. Final. That was it. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me with cameras and microphones. Miss Carter, how does it feel to win against your own family? Do you think justice was served? Will you ever forgive them? I looked straight into the sea of flashing lights and said only one thing. I didn't win. I survived. Then I walked away. The following weeks were quiet, almost too quiet. My father sold his company to cover the debt. Madison moved to another state. Mom sent a few letters, but I couldn't bring myself to open them. They sat in a drawer, sealed, untouched. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding. I moved into a small apartment, overlooking downtown Denver, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every morning, I brewed my own coffee, opened the curtains, and let the sunlight spill across the floor. It felt like breathing again. I started writing too. Late at night, I'd open my laptop and pour everything onto the screen. The pain, the betrayal, the moments of strength I didn't know I had. I called the document The Cost of Loyalty. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival, about telling the truth even when no one wanted to hear it. One afternoon, Daniel came by to drop off the final paperwork. You did it, he said, smiling. They can't touch you anymore. I nodded. It doesn't feel like a victory. He shrugged. That's because justice isn't about feeling good. It's about balance. After he left, I sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the skyline orange and gold. For the first time, I didn't think about the past. I thought about what came next. I'd lost my family, but somewhere in the wreckage, I'd found myself again, stronger, sharper, untouchable. And maybe, just maybe, that was the truest kind of justice there was. 1 year later, I stood at the edge of the same street where everything had fallen apart. The Carter family house still stood 2 stories of beige siding and white shutters, looking exactly as it always had. But it wasn't ours anymore. A young couple was moving in, their laughter echoing through the open door. Boxes, flowers, and the scent of fresh paint filled the air. I watched from across the road, hands in my pockets, the cool Denver breeze brushing through my hair. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. For the first time, that house was just a building, not a wound. After the trial, I disappeared for a while, traveled through the Pacific Northwest, working remotely, writing, breathing. I lived in small towns, stayed in rented cabins, met strangers who didn't know my last name. In those quiet months, revenge stopped being a fire and became something else, a light. Not to burn anyone, but to see myself clearly again. I used to think revenge meant destruction, but I learned it could also mean redemption. When I finally returned to Denver, I wasn't the same woman who had left. I'd built something from the ashes, a story, a purpose, a life that didn't orbit around guilt or betrayal. I got a job offer from a nonprofit that helped women rebuild credit after financial abuse. I didn't hesitate. My past became my credential. I sat with women who looked like they'd been through hell, and I told them, "You're not broken, you were just betrayed." And every time I said it, I felt the words heal a little more inside me too. I also published my memoir, The Cost of Loyalty. I didn't use my family's real names. I didn't have to. The story spoke for itself. It became more successful than I'd ever imagined, not because it was scandalous, but because it was honest. People wrote to me from all over the country, saying things like, "I thought I was the only one. You helped me forgive myself. You made me brave enough to start over." Those messages became my real inheritance, the kind my family could never steal. One afternoon, while sorting through fan mail at a cafe downtown, a familiar voice broke through the noise. "Emily?" I turned. Madison stood there. Her hair was shorter, darker. Her once glossy confidence had dulled into something fragile. She looked older than 27, older than I remembered her being, when everything fell apart. "Can I sit?" she asked. I nodded. For a while, neither of us spoke. The espresso machine hissed in the background, the world carrying on like it didn't know what sat between us. "I read your book," she said finally. "You didn't lie. I didn't need to." She nodded slowly.